During the 1970s and 80s, the Manhattan Transfer were second to none in their overall grasp on the 20th century American musical lexicon. And from their 1976 album, Coming Out, their version of the 1930s standard, Poinciana, the Song of the Tree. This arrangement of the song is done by Alan Paul and band member Tim Hauser. Okay, so far we're hearing the percussion of Bobbye Hall and piano, it says, doesn't say electric piano, by Bill Payne of Little Feat. I love the chord progression of this and just the overall kind of blurry, misty vibe of the instrumentation. Major seventh tonalities, just embellished by the smooth softness of the electric piano, and accented by like light wah-wah guitar. Oh, hear that? Yeah, and kind of glided along by the slow kind of roll of the bass line. Played on this track played on the whole entire album by N.Y.C. Oh, I hear that slight tinkle of that electric piano right there, and the kind of fluttering of the woodwind. Others everywhere, it's magic perfume fills the air. And I believe that is the young, the young handsome guy, Alan Paul. Yeah, the guy with the pompadour. Oh, here, hold that note by that. I believe is Laura Massé, the original tall redhead in the band, before Cheryl Benton took over that slot in 1979. From now until the dawning day, our love will live forever and a day. I love how their voices kind of fall on the major seventh of the key center. Yeah, let's catch up with the lyrics here. It's a standard written by Buddy Bernier, originally performed, I guess made famous in the 1930s by Bing Crosby. Poinciana, your branches speak to me of love. It's about the tree. Pale moon is casting shadows from above. Poinciana, somehow I feel the jungle heat. Within me there grows a rhythmic savage beat. Yeah, this is like evocative of like 30s era, or 30s to like early kind of century, like tropical fixation that like Hollywood tended to emphasize a lot, like something that I guess that reached its zenith with the exotica craze of the late 50s, early 60s. Yeah. I hear that woodwind there, yeah. And the arrangements on that are done by, let's see, we got soprano saxophone by Michael Brecker. His name's been popping up a lot in this 76 to 76 marathon. As a matter of fact, right before, right before I got going on this, I did a Brecker Brothers video about a month ago now. Yeah. You can take apart so many pieces in this and just correlate each little sound, each little note to different atmospheric elements of like tropical island and beautiful trees, like the tree, birds, the color of the sky, the setting of the sun, the sparkle over the waves of water, the blowing, falling leaves and all that. This album produced by Richard Perry, who really had the magic touch during this era. Yeah, producer of Diana Ross, Carly Simon, Leo Sayer. Yeah, a lot of great stuff during this time period. Oh, those little harps, kind of glowy, sparkly tone. From now until the dawning day. This is like perfect for like a slow dance on the beach. Oh, that guitar lick, that light lick right there. Let's see, guitar and orchestral arrangements by Ira Newborn. Furthermore, guitar by Bob Bowles. And let's catch up with, let's hear a bit more. Hear the shimmering of the strings right behind that. This kind of distinct vocal passage, harmony-wise. They hadn't quite accented the melody quite this way or given it that kind of arc yet. Yeah, they're kind of mixing it up. They're kind of hitting different notes now. They've altered the vocal melody. Oh, the flowering of the strings. Oh, the way the Fender kind of does that glowy glissando amid that major seventh chord and the harp just coming in like that. Oh, just... Oh, the beautiful fade out, that summery, heavenly vibe. It's like a sensory overload, perfectly encapsulated, like in this track. Like tropical, like beautiful sights, beautiful visions of nature, beautiful exotic birds, and wonderful smells, and just clean blue ocean, and setting sun, and just overall like romantic setting. Yeah, that was Poinciana, The Song of the Tree by Manhattan Transfer, a song that's been much covered, and I don't have many versions off the top of my head to compare it to. It was pretty much a new song when I bought this album, for me anyway, 18 years ago. Yeah, I was I had already gotten hooked on Manhattan Transfer's 1979 album Extensions, and a few tracks on there like Shaker Song, one of my all-time favorites. And yeah, their vocal take on a song, I guess first done by Spyro Gyra as an instrumental on the first Spyro Gyra album. And just me kind of at the height of like my 1976 romanticism at the time. I come across this album like in the bargain bin and see them wearing these wonderful outfits on the back, also dapper, also kind of outside their time, or like a mixture, kind of like part 70s, part retro, like say 1920s to 1950s chic. Yeah, I've always really dug like especially the image of like the the pompadour cool guy in the band and band elder Tim Hauser. Credit must be given to him for having led the band for so long. From the time they formed in 1971 until his retirement in 2014. Yeah, coming out. Their second album on Atlantic and their second proper album, you could say, because some people don't quite count the 1971 release Jukin on Capitol, which was Tim Hauser in a completely different lineup. I guess the mainstream lineup of the band beginning with the 1975 self-titled release, so like a 4-year gap, and then 75 being the beginning of their like album a year like prolific run with pretty much the same lineup except for the replacement of Laurel Massé in 1979 after she had a car accident that left her injured. And I guess unable to perform. Sadly, I don't know the full extent of that, but yeah, they in 1979 they found Cheryl Benton, who had been singing in I guess the Seattle-based New Deal rhythm band, who were also like kind of like another like 70s era retro 30s 40s band, kind of I guess maybe kind of like in the vein of like Robert Crumb and the Cheap Suit Serenades or something like that. Yeah, I guess in every major market you had like one band kind of, putting that style together for the cabaret circuit and people that were out. There was one, there was a band like that in the UK. I forget their name offhand, but I think they had some members of Audience and Stack Ridge at some point. Yeah, I forget the name of that band now. Anyway, let's hear another song from the Coming Out album. And this to show, and I said at the beginning of this video that this band had like an unparalleled mastery of the 20th century musical lexicon. And they just did like a 1930s standard originally done by Bing Crosby. Here they are doing a version of a 70s era song written by Todd Rundgren from his 1972 album Something Anything, the second track on the album. It Wouldn't Have Made Any Difference, sung by Laurel Massé, I believe. Yeah. Okay, now so far when I before I looked at the credits, I and I may have heard this before I looked, but so far you wouldn't recognize this as the original. They've given it a very different arrangement. The original is in A, duh, like dun, A, do you here they've moved it up to C, and let's just say I like that change. And I like the how they keep on going like major 7, then C major, major 7, dun dun, or like they're no dun no 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 actually suspended second is what they're doing, dun D over C, and then E like that, like third, or yeah, and The
Do you remember the last time I said, if I ever thought of lying, I'd rather think of dying instead?
Oh, I love those lyrics. Like, do you remember the last time? Yeah, if I ever thought of lying, I'd rather think. Yeah, their version actually made the lyrics a bit easier to understand, and made me pay attention to the lyrics a bit more. I could actually like make out the yeah. I'm still trying to so now there are some like phrases in this song that kind of make me do a double take, but I'll unpack that as this goes along.
And maybe you'll remember the last time you called me to say we were through. How it took a million tears just to prove they all were for you.
I love the way that she kind of effortlessly, without forcing it, just kind of they just enough emotion just kind of oozes out of each syllable that she kind of just stretches out. Yeah. Um, and maybe you remember the last time you called me to say we were through. How it took a million tears just to prove they all were for you. But those days are through. Um, so this person at one time, the narrator at one time made great emotional effort to get his or her message across to the subject. And and once had a very self-sacrificing um, approach to the relationship. Like, if I ever thought about lying, I'd rather think of dying instead. Yeah.
But those days are through, 'cause it wouldn't have made any difference if you loved me. How could you love me?
Now, this is quite a change in mood, this chorus from the verses we were hearing. Because it wouldn't have made any difference if you loved me. How could you love me? Um, yeah.
And it wouldn't really make any difference if you really loved me. You just didn't let me go.
Okay, now it wouldn't have made any difference if the subject had actually loved the narrator, as opposed to been sort of callous and unforgiving, apparently. Meaning, I guess that what the song is really saying is that whether or not a callous person who just doesn't really appreciate the efforts that you've put into a relationship, whether or not that person loves you, they're still going to be callous. They're still going to be unappreciative. Yeah, whether they're, huh? You know, I've never really taken the time to sit there and examine the exact message of this song. I've always kind of just taken it in passing as being about someone looking back on a relationship that ended, and just carrying on with their own inner strength and positive frame and putting things into the most satisfying framework that they can come up with to move on. Okay, this is a more convoluted line for me. Because I know of hundreds of times I could be in the most unfaithful arms that you always picture me. And maybe you'll remember that there's a duplicity indicated there, but I cannot quite see who is the unfaithful one. That it's talking about, I guess it's simultaneously acknowledging, the narrator is acknowledging that he or she could be unfaithful, possibly, but chances are the subject was also unfaithful. So it isn't right of this other person to be pulling out the shaming card.
Well, maybe you'll remember that. Though I can't always show proof I was true, no one else could change my mind or stop me coming home to you.
Okay, now this is one of my favorite lines in the song because it kind of acknowledges a bit of duplicity and yet tries to take a moderately high-minded stance. Though I can't always show proof I was true. Meaning that he or she is not going to counter-signal or just legitimize every false accusation in kind of from a standpoint of defense. Like, it's almost like saying, yeah, I don't have a record of every place I've been, of where I was every hour. I don't have an alibi for every, to prove that I wasn't, cheating on you every hour of the day. And so I acknowledge I don't have proof, even though I just told you that I was faithful, and you're just going to have to believe me. And if you're going to continue, but I'm not going to continue to just field these accusations over and over again and let you just keep me locked in this circular loop of shaming. Because the more I counter signal to you and legitimize that treatment from you, the more you're just going to keep on doing it. Yeah, I like that line. Okay, now, no one else could change my mind or stop me coming home to you. But those days are through. So no one else could change my mind, meaning that this person, he or she, the narrator, did have offers, did have opportunities, but perhaps either turned them down because he, she thought, that the narrator thought he, she had the best at home, and just or ultimately preferred what he, she had at home rather than, and I keep saying he, she, whether I'm referring to Todd Rundgren or Laurel Massé. But those days are through because the relationship's over.
But those days are through, 'cause it wouldn't have made any difference if you loved me. How could you love me when it wouldn't really make any difference?
Okay, the arrangements to this recording of the song are courtesy of... I'll get to that in a minute. I moved the page.
If you really loved me, you just didn't love me.
Okay, I need to know who is responsible for this wonderful arranged by... Well, the vocals arranged by Laurel Massé. They don't say really who's responsible for moving the song up to C, those ideas. Maybe that was her idea. Like, we need to have it higher. Like, I can express myself more in C as opposed to A. I'll say it right here. I think C is a more compelling key center for this number than A. But then again, I became much more of a fan of this particular song after I heard the Manhattan Transfer do it. It was never a standout to me off Something Anything. As a matter of fact, it's actually on kind of like a short list of tracks that were kind of meh for me on Something Anything. And don't get me wrong, I love Something Anything. Like I Saw the Light, and then oftentimes this was kind of like a come down from that on there, and then my ears prick up once again when like Wolfman Jack comes on, and then like It Takes Two to Tango, and Sweeter Memories, and then side two definitely being my favorite side of the album, Breathless, the Carousel broke down, the piano drunken ballad at the end. The name slips my mind. The Viking song, that one. Even Marlene, kind of the light, a song that would probably be really scandalous now. And then yeah, the heavier side three, yeah. Uh, there are so many songs I like better than his version of this one. As a matter of fact, I would say the two kind of mass songs for me were always this one and Dust in the Wind, not to be confused with the Kansas song. Although that one's kind of grown on me in recent years. It's kind of gospely. I guess it just wasn't really my poison like 30 years ago when I first got into that album. But yeah, funny enough, ironically, even though Todd Rundgren's one of my favorite musicians of all time, and a lot, and so many of his songs I've just been so addicted to over the years. The songs of his that have actually been covered by other artists that I also like, I sometimes end up liking their version better because they choose songs of his that aren't necessarily my favorites of his, and they like. And the same case was with Robert Palmer, with "Can We Still Be Friends," which is a good song. But on "Hermit of Meek Hollow," I like the two surrounding songs. I've always been kind of like. Two of like my top 10 favorite songs by Rundgren are actually the songs that sandwich that minor hit. All the Children Sing and Hurting for You, which I did a video on like 5 months ago. Yeah, and the thing is, I kind of like the grit that Robert Palmer puts into it, like the way he says "Can we still," just as opposed to the more and he chooses the same key and a very similar arrangement, but yet there's that subtle difference, and then the riff also has a bit more grit, like it's more like dun, 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 as opposed to dun dun dun, like that, and yeah, so it just goes to show what a extreme incredible talent Todd Rundgren is, that even some of the songs that I'm more kind of lukewarm about become favorites of mine when someone else brings out kind of maybe a certain different kind of magic in them. Yeah. Anyway, back to the song. Oh, I love that middle eight. He says something. Todd wrote something very original in the context of he said, she said, duplicity, and reflections on a breakup here. Okay, you just did not love me. Okay, here's where it goes into the late. Enough to believe me, enough not to leave me, enough not to look for a reason to be unhappy with me and make me regret ever want. Okay, now that I examined that after having done quite the in-depth analysis of these lyrics, that middle eight section answers some of the mystery and apparent doublespeak of the song, at least what could be construed as doublespeak on the surface, like, because we didn't get, is he placing, because in passing you could think that the person was making kind of like high-minded reflections on ex-lover, and basically putting the responsibility of the failure of that relationship on the other party. But you delve a bit closer, you realize that's not the case. But at times it seemed like the chorus was kind of at odds with the verses. And this middle eight tells us why it wouldn't have made any difference if he or she had loved him or her. Because even if this person had really loved, it seems as though this person didn't love the narrator enough to believe what the narrator was saying, to believe the narrator's explanations, to believe the narrator's denials of baseless accusation, of apparent baseless accusations of infidelity. didn't love the narrator enough not to leave him or her. Didn't believe in the narrator enough not to basically, and this is like one of the most convoluted yet brilliant lines. Enough not to look for a reason to be unhappy with me. So basically, the narrator is indicating that the subject was so caught up in his or her kind of derangement and destructive thinking mode that that person just kind of sabotaged the relationship with negative thinking and basically just went fishing for reasons to be upset and making up reasons in her or his own head to depending on which singer we're talking about anyway. Yeah. In the case of Todd Rundgren, I guess, yeah, talking about some, it may have been autobiographical. It may have been based on something he experienced or it may not. But yeah, that sometimes relationships do self-destruct because one party has just a real negative way of thinking and just kind of makes up reasons to be unhappy, and instead of focusing on the positive and looking for reasons to be happy, looking on the bright side is always looking on the dark side. That is brilliant. That is a brilliant way of touching on that. Yeah, and then the final two lines, and make me regret ever wanting you, but those days are through. So the person's really only regret is having wanted someone who she could have never pleased because that person is a negative person. Yeah. I love the way she does that. How could you? How her voice just kind of does that leap a bit. She's kind of doing sort of variations on the melody at this point. Hear that kind of icy synthesizer kind of creeping up there behind them with the like little like harp strings. Yes, the Manhattan Transfer doing their very beautiful, very elegant take on the Todd Rundgren classic, It Wouldn't Have Made Any Difference. And before that, Poinciana, both songs from the Manhattan Transfer's 1976 third album, Coming Out. Yes, and you could say the first time they really nailed it, album-wise. The front to back, it's just like one good song after another, showing their mastery of a range of tracks from like, I guess a 50, 60-year time period at that point. Yeah, and some of these would be like Popsicle Toes, another recent track written by Michael Franks and recorded by him the year earlier. The Thought of Loving You, another great track. Helpless, another Laurel Massé highlight on the album. And yeah. And they would go on to record many more great songs in the years ahead. On the 1978 Pastiche album, I guess the last with Laurel Massé, they recorded David Battu's Walk in Love and Rupert Holmes' Who, What, When, Where, Why. A much covered song around that time appeared on his singles album. And in 1979, I already mentioned the Shaker song. Yeah, there's also their version of Nothing You Can Do About It, Graydon Foster track, I guess, that they cut on their Airplay album the following year. And then the early 80s were a really thriving time for the band, like Mecca for Moderns, another one of their, neck and neck with this one is perhaps their finest album overall. And they would get kind of like also more modernistic, more of kind of like a West Coast AOR sound on some of those early 80s albums. Arrangements similar to like Al Jarreau's output from that time period. Yeah, The Manhattan Transfer, a band that could just master any era they put their hands on, and shows with classy arrangements and a great stage act and dapper, well dressed and such. Anyway, for more Rubies and Sapphires from the catalog of the Manhattan Transfer, see the directory of albums by American pop and blue-eyed soul artists linked in the description below. Like and subscribe and follow me on social media, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the two tracks we just heard, the arrangements, the vocals, the instrumentation, the subtle nuances and touches, and even some, like the lyrics, particularly, well, to the second song anyway, like what your interpretations might be or how they might differ or whatever. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled Tri-Maximist, signing off.